The Super Mario Bros. Franchise is home to many of the most fun and impressive games out there, but within all of these games I believe that there are three true standouts which make the series as great as it is. Today we're going to be talking about these three games and I'll be explaining why I think they're the best in the whole series. This isn't in any specific order and it's debatable which one is truly on top. With that being said though, it makes the most sense to start with a true classic, Super Mario 64. Back in 1996, there weren't a lot of options when it came to fun 3D platformers. More and more games in this style were showing up as time passed, but nothing seemed to really master the genre, until of course, Mario 64. What makes Super Mario 64 so impressive is not necessarily that it was made such a long time ago. What makes this game so impressive is that despite being made so long ago, it is still one of the most fun 3D platformers out there. If there was one word to describe why Mario 64 was so successful, it would be innovation. Everything about this game was just so experimental. The controllable camera, the insane range of movement, even the bizarre concepts for most levels. This game was just so far ahead of its time. People come back to Super Mario 64 today and complain about the small quality of life issues like the clunky camera, but they seem to forget that these mechanics were still far better than in the games that came before it. The freedom that this game gives you is simply unbelievable. There are so many different ways to reach stars because of the creative movement, and on top of that you can collect stars in basically any order you want, and then on top of that you can even choose which worlds to explore and in what order. If there's a particular star you don't want to collect or a world you want to ignore, you can simply go someplace else instead of doing something you don't find fun. Mario 64 gives the player a giant buffet of options so that they never get bored. I remember strongly disliking the Jolly Roger Bay level, but since I was able to skip it and go to the other levels that I preferred, it wasn't able to harm my experience with the game as a whole. If an area like Jolly Roger was mandatory to explore like it would be in most other games, I probably wouldn't have liked Mario 64 nearly as much. The ability to choose where you go next is one of the biggest reasons this game stands out so much. Mario 64 is still the best game in the entire Mario series when it comes to player freedom, despite being nearly 30 years old. The best thing about Mario 64 isn't even really the player freedom or the innovation though. The greatest thing about Mario 64 as a whole when returning to it today is definitely the soundtrack. With the levels in this game having so many different themes and appearances and ideas, the music had to be as unique as possible. A game like this with so much variety simply wouldn't be able to have a soundtrack with generic bubbly music. The good news is that every song fits its respective area perfectly, and more importantly, they all serve as great pieces of music on their own. 5 seconds ago I said that Jolly Roger Bay isn't that good a level, and I still stand by that, but the only reason it isn't completely terrible is because of the amazing music in the area. That beautiful electric piano in the background coming in and out perfectly illustrates how calm Jolly Roger Bay truly is. Despite monsters surrounding the area, it's one of the most serene and quiet places in the game, which the song reflects perfectly. Then you jump into the water and all of a sudden, you hear those beautiful strings start to come in. This is when the song goes from very good to possibly the best song in the entire Mario series. It's so simple and elegant, yet it fits the area so well. The other songs are also pretty good. There is so much personality put into every little thing in Mario 64. The worlds are super wacky with a lot of ideas that you don't see in many video games even today, such as Tiny Huge Island. Navigating this area is still extremely bizarre because the mechanic of being either really big or really small isn't something that's easy to get used to. Nonetheless, this mechanic is very cool. Mario himself has so much personality as well. His idle animations are super iconic, you're able to play with his weird face at the beginning of the game, and he actually has voice acting, which still isn't very common for the Mario series. My favorite thing about Mario in this game is that when you fall down to your death, he goes Super Mario 64 is an outstanding achievement for video games as a whole. It was so ahead of the curve with the soundtrack, mechanics, and level design. Yes, it has its clunky moments and we can nitpick the game in hindsight, but it's still a really fun experience despite its flaws. I'll probably make a whole video talking about this game sometime next year, cause it is truly incredible. For now though, let's move on to another one of the greatest Mario games, Super Mario Odyssey. What makes Super Mario Odyssey stand out to me is that it has so much content and none of it feels cheap. There are hundreds of moons scattered across the game, dozens of different outfits and souvenirs, secret worlds you can unlock after completing the main quest. Most video games with this much stuff would simply resort to repetitive missions or mechanics, yet Mario Odyssey manages to keep everything so fresh while also offering the player a near endless supply of content. Not every moon in this game is created equally. Sometimes you'll have to ground pound on a weird looking floor to get one, and other times you'll have to go through an entire challenge within a sub-area. Despite this inconsistency though, every moon is satisfying to collect at the end of the day. Everywhere you look in this game, there's probably gonna be something new and exciting. Even if it doesn't feel like there's a secret right next to you, there probably is. One of the main reasons collecting everything in this game is so satisfying is because the movement itself is fantastic. Most modern video games have the player move around at a very slow pace for the sake of realism or something stupid like that, which makes it a lot easier to appreciate a game like Mario Odyssey, which pushes you into experimenting with the movement as much as possible. There are so many different options, so many moves, so many shortcuts, and so many tricks that the developers probably didn't even think of. The movement in Super Mario Odyssey feels like a direct evolution from Super Mario 64's movement. If Mario 64 is like A New Hope, then Mario Odyssey is like Empire Strikes Back. While the movement in this game is great on its own, it would have become stale if that was all the game had, which is why the capture mechanic is so brilliant. You aren't just Mario now, you're a Goomba, or a fish, or a dinosaur, or whatever else the game throws at you. The different creatures you can transform into may not be that special every time, but being able to do something like this in the first place is super interesting. There's nothing else in the Mario series quite like that moment near the end of the game when you transform into Bowser. Mario Odyssey in general is filled with mechanics that may seem simple on the surface, but make the gameplay incredibly fun. This is definitely one of the less innovative 3D Mario games. Instead of trying to change the gaming scene forever, Mario Odyssey focuses on polishing up everything from the older games while adding a few new things that make the game stand out. This does make Mario Odyssey possibly the most high quality Mario game of all time, but it also means there isn't that much left to say about it. Everything that makes the old Mario games fun is there in this game with a few improvements. Mario Odyssey ultimately represents true perfection for the 3D Mario series. A beautiful orchestral soundtrack, incredible smooth movement, brilliant level design, a bunch of polished mechanics. I really wonder if Nintendo can even top this game at any point in the future. They're gonna need that next 3D Mario game to be Game of the Year material to beat this. Despite Mario Odyssey being so polished and impressive, there is one Mario game that I think remains just as good, if not better: Super Mario Galaxy. This song truly encapsulates the tone of Super Mario Galaxy. Unlike every other game in the franchise, the narrative is very serious and most of the music is more laid back. A song like Dire Dire Dog stands out in Super Mario 64 because of how soothing it is, but in Mario Galaxy, that's just another track. This is not the kind of music you would expect to be standard in a Mario game. When I think of a Mario game, I think of the funny video game guy jumping around and collecting mushrooms, breezing through levels, and trying to make it to the end. What I don't think of is this beautiful music playing in the background as I explore many mysterious areas. The soundtrack in Super Mario Galaxy is not always calming and relaxing though. There are countless songs in this game that really elevate the drama and make breezing through the levels feel like a giant accomplishment. You can really feel your progress every time you collect a star. While this kind of music may not be as soothing as some of the other music in the game, it is still completely different from the stuff you would expect in a Mario game. That variety is really what made previous games like Super Mario 64 so special, and they really took it to the next level with this one. The scale and size of Mario Galaxy's world for its time is so far beyond its competitors, it's not even fair. You're traveling from planet to planet, discovering so many different environments and mechanics. One minute you'll be slowly navigating one of those serene areas with calm music in the background, and the next minute you'll be stingray surfing while desperately trying not to fall off the map. There's a volcano level, there's a bumblebee level, there's even a level where you platform across a bunch of giant toys. There are over 40 completely unique and fleshed out galaxies for the player to explore, and what's crazy about that fact is that the game only takes about 10 hours to beat. Not only is there unbelievable variety in Mario Galaxy's levels, but they're all presented to the player at such a fast pace. Most professional game studios like to take the approach of having 10 big ideas and then trying to stretch those ideas into a 60-hour game. Mario Galaxy takes the approach of having 1,000 big ideas and introducing them so fast and seamlessly that the game only takes about a dozen hours. You're never going to be doing the same thing in this game for a long time. There are no obnoxious quests dragging the game down, there are few to no annoying stars, and every mechanic is polished to near perfection. This game's ability to masterfully implement so many ideas in such a short amount of time without anything feeling rushed is something that few games have ever really achieved. Mario Galaxy ultimately stands out to me because it immersed me in a way that no other Mario game has. The soundtrack, the visuals, the level design, everything is so perfect and blends together so well. If someone was to tell me that they think Odyssey or 64 is better, I would understand why, but Mario Galaxy will always be my favorite.